So in your cuaderno, you should have uno through 100. All right, 100 being which one? 100. Okay, so you should have uno through 100, except with 40, 50, 60, you don't have all of the ones in between. You just have the tens place, okay? So make sure you've got that. And I want to talk about some of the tricks, okay? Some of the problemas you might run into. And I basically got them all on the board, but I'm gonna go ahead and highlight them. So, like I said, spelling is kind of key. Most of you are like, oh, I know uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis. I could do this like backwards even, right? And you get real cocky, and I'm like, okay, spell it. And you're like, Anyway, so that's what we're wanting to avoid is the, So, 6, for instance, is seis with the E before the I, okay? So I'm highlighting that. Because the next one, siete, you've got the I before the E, okay? So however you want to highlight that on your cuaderno, if you want to circle it, if you want to like underline it, make sure that you are cognizant of the fact that that's different. It switches, okay? So seis and then siete. Make sure you've got that on there. Okay, next, we've got once through quince. We've got once, doce, trece, catorce, quince. And first of all, I want you guys all to say those with me. Ready? Once, doce, trece, catorce, quince. Okay? That quince, that's one that'll up here. Is it quince or is it quin? You know, quince. So just kind of start getting that in your brain and we'll work on it. Okay, so those ones are all kind of different than when we get into 16 through 19. How are they different? In what way are they differente? What happens when you start to get to 16? Catalina, do you know? They get longer, and they have diez at the beginning, okay? So I would say that once through quince, a little bit harder because you have to memorize what they are, and in a way, we've got 16 through 19 are a little bit easier because you just have to know that it's 10 and 6, 10 and 7, 10 and 8, 10 and 9. They are longer, so I'll go ahead and put longer, but a little bit easier in that you don't have to remember a whole new word, okay? So I'm trying to think of ways to classify them, and in your opinion, you might be like, well, I think the longer ones are harder, but I'm just trying to show that there's a differentiation, okay, between those, and so we have to group them. So in some way, on your paper, I want you to group together once through quince. So you've got once, doce, trece, catorce, quince. That's one group. And then the next group is 16, 17, 18, and 19. That's your second group, okay? So that's another thing we wanted to talk about. Okay, next, moving on to the 16, 17, 18, 19. So the first thing I want to point out is that your book puts them all together, right, and makes it one long word. That's not always how they do it in Spanish. In some countries, they separate it out to 16, 17, 18, 19. So I want you to write that down. Right next to where you wrote down, or if you don't have enough room, that's fine, put it somewhere. So you want to write down that this is the same thing. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to write down right next to 16, 16. Okay, right next to 17, 17. Right next to 18, 18. Right next to 19, 19. All right, so I'll give you a minuto to do that. Got it? Okay. Okay. So what happens to this Z when you make it into one long word? When you squish it all together? It turns to a C. We're going to talk about the I here in just a second. It turns to a C. Okay? So the Z turns to a C. What happens to the Y, Señor Cornet? It turns into an I. Okay? So the Z turns to a C, the I or the Y turns to an I, And then you actually, for some of these, you need to add an accent then, okay? And that accent is probablemente the thing that's the most difficult for people to remember. It's like, oh yeah, and there's this accent thrown in there, okay? So you basically just have to memorize which ones have the accento. All right, that's how we're gonna work with it for now. Later we'll get into talking more about how and when to use accentos. But for right now, you memorize which ones have the accentos. So moving right along to the 20 part. Let me go ahead and just erase this for a minute. Okay. So when you're looking at the 20 thing, you've got the same situation. You've got, in some countries, it's divided out, 21, which is what I wrote down over here, 22, 23, 24. So write it out. You don't have to do all of them, just write down like the first few ones, okay? 21, 22, and 23. So write those down real quick. Then I'm going to see if anyone knows what I did wrong in spelling these. So be looking for the mistake. All right? Be looking for the mistake that I made on purpose. Okay, Kira, what's wrong with this? Let's just look at 21. What's wrong with it?
You put an extra E behind the T.
Okay.
It's bothering me.
It is bothering. It's
Yes.
bothering me too. Okay, you're not going to have E, I, U. Okay, no. So that 20, it gets dropped. Whenever you squish them together, 21, you squish it together and you drop that E, okay? And then we've got the same situation where the Y turns to I, okay? And then the rest. So let's look at the next one, 22. Again, got to drop that E. The I turns to Y. And then we've got something else that's going to be different with 22. What is it? Accento. Muy bien. Un accento. And then same thing down here. Drop this E. I turns to Y. And what do you need?
Oh.
Marcos?
The E needs an accent.
Okay, needs an accent. Okay. And then if you were to go down all the way to 26, same thing. That seis gets an accent, which is actually kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that because 16 needed an accent too. Okay, so that one's kind of easier to remember. Okay, any preguntas over all of these? Let's move on. Okay, so next I want to talk about the tens places. Okay, tens, 10, 20, 30. Okay, in Spanish we've got 10, 20, 30. Let's go ahead and say these together. 10. 20. And remember the V sounds like a V, kind of like a B, 20. 30. And then 40. 50. 60. 70. 80. 90. Good job. You guys didn't say 90, but 90. Okay. And then 100 or ciento. Okay, muy bien. Now let's talk about these. First of all, we've got that whole problem about the I and E, or the E or I, which one goes first. In English, we're like, I before E, except after C, right? We've got like this cute little ditty that we sing, and we're like, oh, I know how to spell everything correctly, except there's a few exceptions. All right, in Spanish, they don't have that jingle. They don't do that, so sometimes it's I first, sometimes it's E first. You just have to memorize it. So first off, D-I-E, so we've got that. Again, I would circle that or underline it, whatever you want to do, because the very next one on 20 is then the E before the I, okay? So we've got that problema. And then for 30, we've got, again, E before I. So that's the first thing I want to highlight, okay, is the IE problem. Okay, the second thing I want to highlight is actually a helper. This is something that's like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. when looking at 30, what word does it look like? Which of our numbers 1 through 10 does it look like? Trace. Okay, I actually got it on the board, so that should be easy. It looks like trace. They both start off with TRE, okay? And all of these are going to actually look like what they're referring to in the ones place, okay? For instance, 40 looks like, 50 looks like, 60 looks like, except what dropped? The I, okay? So notice, there's no I. So that's kind of like, I'm giving you a heads up, beware, cuidado, that's like a warning, okay? Same thing though for 70. 70 looks like 7, but there's no I, and that one would come before, okay, but there's no I. 80 looks like 90 looks like, except the UE changes to a O, okay? The UE, sorry, I said UV. The UE changes to an O, so be careful with that one too, okay? And then we've got CN, it's kind of like, kind of hanging out here by itself, but what I want to point out about CN, have you guys heard of centennial? Yeah.
Yes.
Like a centennial celebration, I guess, well.
100 year.
Cent is 100.
Cent is 100, okay? So CN looks like that, right? Okay? So that's kind of an easy way to remember. All right, any preguntas before we get started on our next thing? Which, let's see how much time we've got. Good. Okay, preguntas? No? Okay, cut please. And